Hello, and welcome to the Posers Podcast, the place where we skip the fluff, say the quiet parts out loud, and dig into what really matters. This is where photography, psychology, and business collide. I'm Jody, your host, and I'm bringing you my raw takes, hard wins, and a whole lot of unfiltered honesty about what it takes to build a photography business that actually connects and makes money. So ladies, grab your headphones and get your tits up and your ears open because we are going to build something really incredible together. Okay, hello, and welcome back, my beautiful posers. This feels a little bit different for me today because as I give that little intro that I have found myself always saying on every single episode, I have somebody beautiful staring back at me as I say it. And I'm like, okay, that makes me feel a little bit weird. Okay, but we are back. I think this is episode number 15 or so. I'm starting to lose track, which is probably a really good thing. Because notoriously, I have never committed to long form content in my business. And honestly, whenever I was debating the idea of starting a podcast, that was my number one fear, that I was going to be one of those podcast girlies who puts out a few episodes and then is like, okay, that's a lot of hard work. So now I'm not going to do it. But even my team said the other day, I think on episode 12, they were like, Jody, you've gone a whole entire quarter and you have produced like 12 episodes in a row for 12 weeks straight. And I'm like, can we just celebrate? I have shown up the way that I said that I would show up. But today is the 15th episode, I think. And we've got a first happening. We have Shannon Griffin I was going to say in the studio, but she's not. She's in Florida. She's in Florida, but she is coming to us live on the podcast today. And I want to give like a little hype up. But first, I want to say, Shannon, we just recorded together for the Motherhood Anthology. So now I'm just going to say we're on tour.
Yeah. Oh,
like, this is our live US tour. We're debating whether or not we should take it international or not. So I think I alluded to this in a few episodes ago, how I met Shannon. And before I even
I listened to that one. I was smiling.
I said, I'm not letting you speak. Before I even let Shannon speak, I am going to tell you the girl crush that I have on this woman. My husband would attest to the fact that when I signed up to speak at the Focus and Flourish event, I went into a dark place of comparison, and it's all Shannon's fault. Honestly, I showed my husband your Instagram and I was just like, look at this girl. Look at her work. Look at what she creates. Like, I can't compete. I can't compete with that. And bless him, he's always so great. He was like, I don't think you're competing. And I was like, oh,
that was the perfect thing to say. It wasn't like fluffing you up, like, no, your work's better by putting somebody else down. He's like, you're not competing.
Well, I mean, he did tell me I'm perfect.
Well, you are.
Because I am. But no, he said something along the lines of like, I think you're thinking about this the wrong way. I don't think you're competing with her. And I was like, that is such a great answer to give me right now because he was exactly right. But that did not stop me from I don't want to call it a doom scroll. I want to call it like a Care Bear stare scroll into your Instagram feed because that's what I felt like. Like every time I was looking at a photo, I was just sending like as if I had my heart on my stomach and I was just like sending it over to you.
I felt it.
Okay, so then on the Motherhood Anthology, we couldn't really tell this like full story because we kept it a little bit cleaner than usual. But welcome to the dark side of the internet. You can say whatever the fuck you want.
I am so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm going to let you talk at some point. I swear to God. But so then whenever we ended up meeting, I had this full blown girl crush. I had thought about you for weeks, Shannon, for weeks, but I honestly thought that I wasn't going to really vibe with you that much in person because I'm an obnoxious, like loud, like center of the room kind of person who like you can sort of stick in a closet at some point because you want me to shut up. And you online came across much more like thoughtful, much more like aware,
Reserved.
much more artistic than I am, like all of this. So I was like, oh, I don't know that we're gonna vibe. But so you walked through the front door of the house that we were all staying in, and you said something like, my tits are out, like, let's go, or something
I
like
can
that. You
tell you
said, my tits
exactly
are
what
down.
happened.
What did you
There
say?
was a there was an outdoor area. You and Whitney walked in. First of all, it took me like an hour to figure out how to open the door at this Airbnb. You and Whitney walked in, and who's an amazing, that's a whole other story. She's
Whole
amazing.
other story.
There was like
Love
this
her.
outdoor area that you were looking through the window and you're like, this is
Mhm.
amazing. Does it go to the other Airbnb? And I was like, no, but they should put like an outdoor shower. And you were like, oh, I love that. I was like, get out there and get your tits out.
Oh, that's what it was. I knew that there was the word tits. That's how much I blacked out with my love for you, Shannon, is you said the word tits. And everybody on this podcast knows, like, my whole thing is I'm like, tits up, ears
Tits
open,
up.
let's go. So you said that, and I didn't even think about this fact that I was probably mid conversation with Whitney and I probably just bailed on her. I probably was just like, you know what, you're not important to me anymore. We love Whitney.
Come to find out she's just like us.
She's literally our third wheel. And so I probably bailed from that and I whipped my hair around. So, like, I was Lizzo whipping my hair around. And I was like, who is that? And I literally walked over to you at the island of the kitchen. I sat down and I got like 3 inches from your nose. And I was like, I like you.
And the rest is history.
And
Here
that's
we
how
are.
our love affair started.
Two
And
podcasts later.
I've since told my husband, since I came back from the conference, that I just feel like sometimes you meet your soul people.
Yes.
And that somehow in some other life, me and you crossed paths and
We were lovers.
we were lovers in some other, we always talk about the fact that we're both divorced. And so we both say that, like, there was a time period where we were like, should we marry
We
another
should have
man,
met
or
each other
should we
sooner.
should we go the other route? And if I had met you prior to my husband,
I
like,
would have been an amazing stepmom.
oh,
Like I
I don't know where he would be in life right now. Like, Maeve is basically my daughter as it is. So that's Shannon's daughter's name. Anyways, okay, so enough hype about how insanely perfect you are in life. Shannon is based out of Florida. And like I said, we met at the conference where she gave the most incredible presentation that had people's jaws on the floor with her process, how she runs her business, the balls that this woman has inside of her business, you guys. Like, I am blown away. And so I want to say before, again, before I let Shannon talk,
Hey, I'm just gonna mute.
yeah, just, you know what? You don't need to really, this is still a one woman show. Okay.
I'm here to hype you up.
Yeah. No, before we are going to get into a little bit of that process, and I am going to let Shannon talk, but I want to tell you what we had actually planned before. In talking about this episode, we were like, what can we do? What can we talk about? We started with the idea, and maybe we'll get into this a little bit later, that me and you are both running very successful businesses, but they are so wildly different, but then also with some fundamental sameness to them too. Similarities, that's the word rather than same.
Yeah, that sameness. I like same.
I like sameness too. You know what? Trademark that. Okay, so
Whitney,
Whitney's a trademark attorney, so that's why we keep on saying trademark that. Okay, wait. So we were going to play a little game about
we listen and
what's
we
it?
don't judge.
We listen and we don't judge, but business edition. So we were both sort of coming up with these funny little quippy things, mistakes that we had made in our business, things that were just so ridiculously laughable at this point, now that we can look back on them. But something happened this morning that came up very authentically and very organically, and it's real time and it's real life, and it's something that I think really could be talked about. And so you made the really, really, like, bold and brave decision to say, like, yeah, let's just process it over this podcast. So
Yep.
how do we want to dive into that?
That's up to you. I guess we could talk a little bit about at the workshop, you and I both presented, which you went
Yeah.
before me, and I hated you for that because you were so good. I was like, God, I gotta follow up this shit. So you went before me. I told you I felt like I ran a marathon. I was sweating so bad when you were, I knew you were a day and a half, and I felt like you were my daughter up there. I was crying. You got done. I was like, you did it. Remember I was texting you because you were at another table and I was like, everyone was laughing and crying and they loved you and you did it, Jody. You did it.
Did it. I did it because Shannon
And
made
just
sure to
met
let
you.
it was my first time
It
and
was
Shannon
your first
made sure to let
time.
everybody know it was my first time. But I did do it. Okay, so we were at that conference
And
and
then I led a shoot. You did not. I
I did
did.
not because I'm
So
scared to death,
I know.
Shannon.
And
I'm
we're gonna talk
scared to
about
death
that.
that and
It
that's
was
just
an
gonna
add-on. So
yeah.
you and I, we went to the conference knowing that we were both given a presentation, and then we were given the option, do you want to do any like one-on-one mentoring? Do you want to do any shoot add-ons? And I've never led a shoot, and I intentionally haven't in the past because I don't really know how to teach on that. Like people always ask me, like, I want to see you shoot, or do you teach your shooting? And I'm like, I don't know how to explain why I photograph women the way I do. I don't even know the full
Well,
reason
because
why
it just
I
comes from
photograph.
inside of you. And
Yeah.
I completely understand that. Before we dive into like the shoot
Yes.
part of that, I want to talk about my interpretation of your presentation part, like the
Okay.
classroom style part. Both of us
Okay.
main stage like to all of the attendees there. And my interpretation from the presentation that you gave, my jaw was literally on the floor because me and you had talked for the day and a half leading up to our presentations, and I hadn't really like gotten the full scope of what it is that you do. And I know for a fact that so many people who were sitting there and listening to that, even of the speaker panel, so even of the people who are like running really incredible businesses and they're super experienced and they're further along in their businesses than some of the attendees, even they along with me were jaws on the floor with what you spoke about in regards to your process. But I know that we got a little bit of like feedback from the attendees, and some people felt like there was too much kind of left on the table that like
Yeah.
didn't get cleared up about what it is you do. And I want to talk a little bit about that and how that feels in regards to like what we were going to Florida to do as educators, like making sure that we are one, running our own businesses too,
Yeah.
and making sure that we're putting it out all on the table for the people who are listening, but that also we're supposed to leave a little bit
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
table there.
Yeah.
We're supposed to leave a little bit behind closed doors because we do have education arms to our business. So
Yes.
tell me
Yes.
like that side and like what you were thinking and what you were
So
feeling.
I think I wanted to like unpack all of this with you, not only with you. So you called, you were like, let's talk. And then I was like, let's do it on the podcast because I feel like there's not a lot of gray area. I feel like people are very defensive. Like it's easy for me to read this feedback and be like, well, you don't
Hold on,
understand
let
how
me
progress
clarify.
works. Yes.
You think that educators can get really defensive,
Really
not the
defensive.
attendees,
No,
not
no, no,
the
no, no.
people who
Yes.
are at
Thank you for
focus
clearing
groups.
that. Yes.
Yeah,
The
but
educator.
that us educators, which is funny for me to even put myself into that like ballpark now, but here I am.
Here
Um,
you are.
here I fucking am. Okay, but so us as educators, if somebody gives us feedback about what it is
Yes.
that we're putting out there, there is
Yes.
this tendency to get defensive and get your hackles up and to get prickly about it. So that's
Yes.
what Shannon's saying. Okay, go.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying that. Yes, not the attendees. So there's just so many new things in here. Like this was Brittany's first conference, which she did freaking
Oh, it
phenomenal.
was
Like
so good.
I was like, if this were my first conference, I'd be like, I brought water and you get some snack
I'd
bars.
literally forget the water.
And we're
So
not, yeah, and we're not on a schedule because I don't know how long someone's gonna, no, it'd be,
no,
she did
no, she
her,
did
she and her team, like I
fantastic.
have nothing, I have no bad feedback for them. But it was her first time. Some of these attendees had never been to a workshop before. It was not my first time speaking, like giving a presentation, but it was my first time leading a shoot. So there was a lot of news and like having I do want to have grace for myself, but I'm kind of the same in parenting where I also really want to like kind of shit on myself for a second because I feel like there's growth in that. When people are like, give yourself grace and like you did the best that you can, I'm like, did I? Could I do better? So this is where I kind of want to like, as a whole, like talk about how these things can be really hard. And but I told Jody, it was like 6:30 your time. I was on my walk and I was like, I texted you yesterday saying I'm having a really hard time coming up with like we listen and we don't judge.
Yeah, because
And
you're
then
perfect.
yeah, this
I
morning I was
rattled
like,
off like four to you, Shannon. I was like, here's when I was an idiot this time. Here's when I was an idiot this time. How about you? And you were like,
I can do
crickets,
that in life, but
crickets,
business,
I'm perfect.
honestly. No, not at all. And we have the same kind of like tax story of not paying taxes, not knowing. But
Yeah.
I very much was like, I have something now. I have something big now. Like
Yeah, you woke up this morning like, oh, I've got it.
well, this came to me a week ago and it was sitting on my counter and our house was getting clean today and I was moving stuff around and I was like, what is this? And I opened it, I was like, oh yeah, the feedback. And this was at 6 a.m. and my daughter's about to get ready for school and I'm reading it and my heart's in my stomach and I'm like, ugh, like it's so hard sometimes to read these things about yourself or to come to terms with like, okay, maybe I didn't know what I was doing. So now I'm in this weird place of like, I'll read these. It's not very long, but it's like this weird place of I kind of want to talk it out with you of where do I go from here? Because I, as an attendee myself of other workshops, I know what that feels like to pay that money that you've worked so hard for. For some people, this is like a week's worth of work to pay for this, like a
Yeah.
month. Like and I want to make sure there's like this balance of making sure that they get what they needed out of it without giving everything of myself. Like,
Okay.
where is
But
that line?
also, sidebar, I'm going to give the listeners right now a little like insight into the conversation that happened at 6:30 this morning while I was standing in my kitchen making
And I'm
breakfast
picking
for
up
my
dog
kids.
poop.
I was like, literally, hold on, let me get my kids all off to school and then we'll have this conversation. But within the first 30 seconds, Shan, you had rectified this in my head at least, because the first thing that you said to me was exactly what you just said there. You're like, these people paid money and they feel as though I didn't give everything that I needed to give for the situation. And in that same exact breath, you said, I have this other like bit of like education that I can give them. And I'm going to give them that. And I'm going to give them that for free because I want to make sure that they are fully taken care of, that they know that I care, that they feel as though I came up short, which I will also say, I don't think you came up short. I think that there was a huge difference in the fact that you were teaching on your process. Like we're still just talking about the classroom session. So you were teaching on your process. I chose to speak on a completely different topic that I could teach one lesson about, right? Whenever you're, as a photographer, whenever you're talking about your process, that's a mastermind. Like
Yes.
I literally just launched a mastermind and to go through my whole entire process of teaching people what I actually do in my business, that's an 8 week mastermind.
Yes.
And honestly,
Yes.
I think it's more like a 12-week mastermind.
Yeah.
So for you to go up there and for you to talk about your process and this process, you guys, this is going to have to be a part two of this podcast because I know we're going to go long today. But this process was so immaculate and so jaw dropping that of course there was information that still stayed behind a curtain.
Yeah.
Like of course that is what happened because there's no way in 40 minutes that you're going to be able to go up there and talk about your process and be able to answer all of the questions that these people had because I would have been able to talk to you for days asking questions about how you go through this.
Yeah.
So I just want to say where your head is at and where your heart is at is already in the right place. And I don't, especially after listening to this, I don't think that anybody would have any question about that.
Okay. I just want to make sure like this is also not to like because we're talking about 6 people that took the shoot. So I'm not doing this to like try to save face because I'm gonna reach out to them separately because most people aren't gonna know. But
Yeah,
this
if
is
it
more
was
like
60 people, if it was 600 people, that's to
yeah,
save face. But you're
yeah,
making sure that 6 individuals feel as though they got their money's worth from
right.
like what they signed up
And I
for.
think I just want to talk about this because there's so many conferences and so much education, and it's like, how can we do better? How can people really get their money's worth while we're still able to make a living? So for people who have never taught at a conference, everyone will tell you, you and I talked about this morning, the point of a conference, if you are an educator, which Jody and I are, if you're an educator, you don't get paid. Like we did not get paid to go teach at this conference. This was 4 days away from our family. Jody had to get there by plane. Luckily, it was close enough for me to drive. We had to pay for our own food. Luckily we had lodging, but we came out of pocket for that. And so it's one of those things that you are supposed to give a taste of what you offer. And the whole goal is that these people are going to come away inspired. They're going to get enough that they could change their business, but then they might want to reach out to you of like, I want to dive deeper into this.
Yeah.
So that's a way that they're getting their money's worth, but then you also have a chance to make money on the back end.
Especially because they're coming in and they're seeing the Jodies who are literally standing in the front of the room acting like a fucking clown, just being ridiculous. And like knowing whether or not you gravitate towards that kind of education.
Yes.
And then you've got the Shannons who are coming up and things are a lot more thoughtful, like I said, and aware and all of that. And you're way more artistic than I am. So really going to a conference and diving into each person's sort of ecosystem and seeing how they work
Yes.
and seeing how they talk and seeing how they teach, that's the valuable part for the
Yeah.
attendees. And the valuable part for us is that we're getting to see a new audience.
Yes.
We're getting
I
to speak
think
in front of new people.
I think a takeaway from this, if you're listening and you're considering, I hadn't even thought about this before, but I toot my own horn. I think this is a really good point. But I think if you're considering like going to a workshop because someone you love is there, compared to paying and doing one-on-one mentoring, and this is not a plug for myself, but to go to a conference where 12 people are speaking and to think, I'm going just for this one person, you're not going to get your money's worth. Like, I think there were like two or three people that are like, I came because you were on the ticket. And it's like, why only 40 minutes to talk out of all these 12 speakers? Like, that's not, you're not going to get what you want out of this. So I think if you're like on the fence, you should just pay to do one-on-one mentoring with that speaker instead of paying for an entire conference. Like
Yeah, I
I
think 100%. Like if you know that you already gravitate to someone, just invest in
yeah,
that, knowing that that's how you speak with that person. But then also to talk about the fact that there is so much education that's out there. And I want to talk a little bit about the people who get burned inside of that education and how to sort of like see those red flags because it kind of sucks. I've been on the other side of
yeah,
this
me
kind
too.
of
Me
education.
too.
I think we all have. I've been in $25,000 masterminds. I've been in $15,000 masterminds. I've spent lots of money to learn from people and then to get inside of it and to then feel as though it either wasn't the right fit
Yeah,
or you didn't get your money's worth of what you wanted or promises that were made weren't delivered. And I think that this conversation right here is so important because if I'm going to invest money, I want to invest money in the Shannons of the world. Because even the way that you approached it this morning, where there was not an ounce of defensiveness, there was not even a minute of like you thinking about yourself, your automatic response was, how do I make this right? And again, I don't think there's anything that you have to make right. I think that you're over analyzing and like over delivering and making sure that you're taking care of all of the people around you. And I think that that is the biggest green flag that you can ever see from an educator. So if you're on the fence about whether or not you want to do education with somebody, I think it's a really good idea to hop into their one-on-one that they're offering, hop into like a discovery call with them and ask, how have you handled this sort of
yeah,
stuff
that's
in the
good.
past?
Yeah.
Right? Like and see whether or not that gut feeling really aligns with whether or not you feel like they're telling you the truth. Like
Mhm.
because if you're an educator, you have 100% let somebody down at some
Yeah.
point.
Yes. Yes.
It's
Yes.
impossible that you haven't, right? So to be asking those questions like when you felt let down, how did you handle it within a mastermind group or how did you like take that kind of feedback and then hear how they're speaking and how they're listening and that's going to give you more information about the mastermind in general than I think anything
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just had a situation this morning that happened that it was actually one of the attendees from the Focus and Flourish conference was DMing me about whether or not she should jump into my mastermind.
Yeah.
And I had had a side conversation with her at the conference, and I know I adore her as a person. I know she adores me as a person. And so we had had this little side conversation. And whenever she reached out on her DMs this morning and told me that she was considering joining my mastermind, I told her no.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a huge thing to hear from an educator. I didn't tell her no because I don't want her to be in there. I want
Yes.
her to be
Right.
in there. Of course, I want my bit. I
You want
mean,
to hang out with
make
her.
I have to make money too. Like I want my mastermind to like sell
Fill
out.
up. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's fine. It already came close to selling out this morning whenever it launched, so it's fine. But I told her, I was just like, I don't think that this is the right fit for you right now
Yeah.
because of some stuff that she had told me about in Florida. And so, like, that kind of interaction and that kind of transparency, that kind of integrity, like, that's what you want to feel
Yeah.
when you are signing up within a mastermind or even something smaller than a mastermind, even buying a course, even doing something like that, that you really feel like that person is there to really pour into you and really give you the information you're signing up for and not do a lick of gatekeeping.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely. And it's hard too because like I said, this is my first time leading a shoot. So some of the feedback I got was like I didn't teach. I didn't teach what I was shooting. It was more of like they just watched me and then it was a portfolio building. And one of the people was like, I didn't want a portfolio building. I wanted you to teach. But then also our model came back and doesn't want her like nipples or butt crack showing, and they're upset that they can't really show that in their portfolio. I think what's
it,
hard for me is I've
sidebar,
been,
it was a boudoir shoot. We
it
don't
was.
normally have nipples and butt cracks out in
I mean,
in photo shoots. I
I
mean, I
mean,
do actually like
yeah,
give me a
yeah.
naked baby butt all day long. And
Oh,
I
oh
love a
my
naked baby butt, but those are not the butt cracks that we're talking about right here. Shannon is an insane boudoir photographer. We haven't even gotten into like that whole like side of her business yet because we were wanting to process through this, but we were doing a boudoir shoot. I was actually there because I was playing bounce.
word.
I was holding the drapes and opening them, and then somebody parked in the parking lot. And I'm like, hold on, pause the shoot. I was being like the community
You
mom.
were the best.
Yeah.
You were the best assistant
I was
ever.
I was such a phenomenal assistant. But yeah, but even in speaking about your process the day before, was it the same day? I can't keep them
It
straight.
was the same day. Yep.
Yeah, okay, so you had spoken about your process earlier in the day. And then whenever we got into shooting, like I almost kind of like innately knew that you were a quiet photographer, that you're very much so like you're very in tune with your client. You are so connected in that way, in a deep, deep way because of the conversations that you had had prior to, which we'll get into that with your process. But I knew going in, but granted, I'm an experienced photographer. I've been to a lot of these things. So I already had a clue that you were going to be very quiet, very connected with your client. I was about to say subject as if she was like, I don't know, a soda bottle that you were photographing for a product shoot. No, you were very connected. So I expected that. But some of the attendees felt as though they just wanted you to teach to your process a little bit
Mhm.
more than just showing your
Yeah.
process.
Yeah. What's hard is I think I was trying to go too deep with it for a conference. So that's where like the one-on-one mentoring, like usually if you want to do a shoot with me, I charge $10,000 and you come to me in Florida. It's
Woo!
10,000.
Hold on. My armpits started to sweat. Say it again, Shannon. Say it again.
If you
If
want to
you,
mentor with me,
I want to say it in claps. If you book with Shannon fucking Griffin, you're booking a 10K shoot, people. Oh my
not
God.
my clients, but mentoring.
Oh my, oh my
But
God.
to do
I
the
love
shoot
you.
with me, but because leading up to it, we do 4 mentor sessions and then we do the session because I want them to like see where they started with. So the hard thing was is I had gotten the 6 attendees email and I was like, I want you guys to look over the questionnaire for the model and think about visualize how you would photograph her leading up to it. And so I wanted that constant contact with them. And I was like, email me, tell me how you're feeling, if you have any ideas. No one reached out
Wait,
to me.
pause. Hold on. You had the emails for the 6 people that you knew had signed up for your shoot that they were
Yeah,
doing in Florida, and you were having this kind of mentoring happening before the conference ever even started.
yeah, yeah.
Shan, I love you so much. You've got to give yourself some grace. You went so far
Because I was
above
like, if
and
I'm
beyond.
gonna do a shoot, it doesn't make sense for me to just show up and photograph a model. Like the whole reason I get the images I get in my portfolio is because I am connecting and I wanted these people to approach the boudoir session how I would. And so I told them, look at these. What's gonna happen is when I give the presentation, when you're in the room, I'm gonna go in detail about some of her answers and I want to see how your mind shifts and now how you're gonna visualize the session.
Okay,
So
here's
I
what I'm
didn't
going to say.
want so
Choose
I didn't want to take over the shoot because I wanted them. to see her and see how they were going to photograph her. And I was there if they needed help. Like, I don't think I explained it well enough. I think that's like, there was a
But
miscommunication.
two things can be incredibly true in this scenario right now. Thing number one being that you fucking killed this. Like, oh my God, I didn't know this piece that you had given them your process, you had given them the questionnaire, you had shown them what you were doing with the client going into Florida. And I love that I talk about Florida as if it's like a whole event. Florida as a state is just a whole.
Florida is
Yeah,
a
I don't
shit
live there. You
show.
live there. But you had done all of this run up into the conference, and they got to see so much of how you work and what you do. And on the other hand, I can also see that you gave them so much, and they're so obsessed with what you create and like being inside of your world that they still wanted more. That's
Yeah.
exactly what happened. Is they still wanted more from you in order to know how to run the kind of business that you are running. And so that's the only feedback that they have to give is like, I wish she had taught to this. I wish she had taught to that because you're so fucking good
Don't make
that
me
they
cry. I
just
love you.
like literally.
I just needed to hear another. That's part of the reason I wanted to talk through it with you because we've talked way more than the attendees and I have. And again, I'm not trying to do this to be like, was I in the wrong? But I feel like talking about this stuff because I want to keep teaching, but I need to know my boundaries and I need to know, do I want to do another lead shoot or do I say, look, I'm like Elizabeth Messina. If you want to do a shoot with me, you got to book one-on-one. Like I have to see now where I want to go with this because
Yeah.
I don't want people feeling this way at the end of the day. And the other hard part, really hard part that both people commented on is I wish that Shannon would have talked to the model more about the fact that these were going to be shown. And we did. We had many conversations. I was like,
You
are
can't
you
have.
comfortable with it? And the thing is, after she saw what some of the people were posting, she's like, I may not be comfortable showing this much of myself. And what am I saying? I have to pull back
You
because
have
it's
to.
right. But
Anything
I
like that.
also understand the frustration because now what are they going to use for their portfolio? So it's like a lose-lose situation.
As women in this business and in this industry, as two women who both shoot boudoir, we both know how important client privacy is.
Yes.
100, especially as women, and for women to have their bodies on the internet. There is so much that's a whole other podcast that we
Yes.
could do
Yes.
in
Yes.
that right there.
I'm
And
very protective, like very protective.
you are even more so protective than I think anybody else I've ever like listened to or learned from or anything like that because you are so attuned, you are so aware of what you are creating and what you are putting out onto the internet. And I know you, Shan. I know that even if you had booked a model instead of using one of the other girls, by the way, she basically was a
Oh my
model.
gosh, she
She
killed
is
it. She freaking killed it.
stunning and gorgeous. And she did so incredibly good during that shoot. And honestly, some of the stuff that was happening, I was screaming in the background. I was like, shoot that, shoot that. Did you guys get that? Hold on, get this thing. Like I was literally Kris Jenner.
She
I was
killed it.
literally in the audience with a recording, being like, you're doing great, sweetie. You're doing
We're
great. Like,
done. We're
that
done.
shoot was so hot and so incredible. But I know that had you hired a model for that and had that model retracted her consent to have that on
Yes.
the internet, you would have done the same
Same
exact thing,
thing.
even if there was conversations and contracts and all the things.
I have every client sign a contract, but I tell them if you ever want
Yeah.
this taken off, this doesn't.
I do the same thing before I ever post anything, even if it doesn't show anything, I
Yes.
still send a text, hey, I'm about to post this. Are
Same.
you okay with this being on the
Same.
internet?
Same.
Everybody gets consent, consent, consent,
Yep.
consent.
Yep.
And we all know the minute that that consent is revoked, it's revoked, period,
It's
end
revoked.
of story. And I know that the attendees know that too,
Mhm.
but we can also understand their frustration of
Yes.
that. And
Yes.
I
So I
can
don't know what the answer is.
there
Like
is none.
moving
There
forward,
is
right?
none
Right.
because the person whose body it is, she gets to control that, period.
Yes. Yes.
Period.
Yeah.
End of story. There's
Yeah.
nothing that anybody can do. It's the same exact thing. If I did a photo shoot in my studio that was nails and just fucking phenomenal,
Yep.
if she says no, she says no.
I
And
had one
I
of
would
those.
have so much like,
I
oh,
had that
I could post.
Orthodox Jewish woman who she's like, even your girlfriends can't see this. So Musea had to shut down the lab for like a couple of hours and have an all-woman team print her stuff because she is Orthodox.
Yeah.
And 5'10", one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen, goddess. Some of my favorite photos will never, I couldn't even show a friend, like will never see the light of day, like ever,
And
like
that's the
never.
business.
Yes,
And that's the business. And my heart does hurt for the attendees who
me
can't post
too.
those photos,
Me too.
but it doesn't hurt enough for me to say, like, we're going to ignore the rights of this woman.
Yeah, right,
No
right.
way.
I
End of.
just wish I knew the answer because Boudoir is just so tricky with that. Like, I don't, even if I used a model, she could retract. Like, I've had people a year later that are like, I'm a teacher now. Do you think you could get those pulled from Google? Do you think? And I'm like, yes, 100%. I'll take it off my website. I'll take it off my social. There's no portfolio that's more important than their privacy. So I just don't know what the answer is. I guess there's not, but it's like going in, people need to know. Like, and I wish like I would have, that's the part that I'm like, oh, I should have thought about this more because I would have done more covered, but the issue is the model wanted a lot of nudity. So it's
Yeah.
like, what do you, she wanted it. She's like, I feel better nude than I do in like lingerie and stuff. So it's like,
As she
yeah,
should, because I
I
saw her.
know. I was like, your boobs are amazing.
No, I think sadly there's no answer to that. And honestly, it's just part of the boudoir business.
Yeah.
And there's no answer, even as business owners, there's no answer to it whenever we can't show something that we really want to
Yes.
show because it's so beautiful. So I think we have to let that one go. But the one thing that I was going to say that would change, like if you ever wanted to do like a shooting situation like this at a conference again, I think it's also something that you learned here is very easily rectifiable on the next one to just say like, hey guys, I know we've been talking for, these last few weeks. You've seen my whole process behind the scenes. I just want to let you know that once I get to shooting, I'm very connected. I'm very aware. I'm very attuned with the client, and it's not a overly teaching experience. I'm not going to talk a lot. I'm going to show you how I move. I want you to study how I move versus studying how I speak. And that's it. And then
Yeah,
they
that's
just
how
know.
I want to watch a shoot. I think the issue is that I should have gotten more feedback before to see how other people approach it, but it's still what like I don't know how to again, I don't know
Yeah,
how to explain
you
what I'm
have to
doing.
be you. That's
But
the
my
thing
other
that
thing
makes it.
we talked about it the day before about how you would, I'm not never gonna name names, but you attended a workshop and the photographer, like you were about to take a picture and the photographer was like, no. And it like totally rocked your world. And I was
It
watching
like
these,
made me cry in front of 11 people.
right.
Like, can
And I
you
was
believe
watching these
that?
women photograph this model and they were all doing such a phenomenal job and all of them were taking the lead. Like there was no one that was like, I don't know. Like, and there were a couple of people that asked me questions and I came in and I like,
Yeah, I watched that
helped,
happen.
but I don't know. It's just so hard because that's just my personality. I'm like, I want to watch you. You're like, you're the artist. Do your thing. Like, I
Yeah.
want to, like, I'm here if you need. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to harp on this, but it was just like,
Yeah.
wanted to talk about it because there's so many people that I attend conferences and do the shoots and photographers and the attendees. Like, I want both sides to be kind of talked about.
I think my biggest takeaway from all of this too is that I just really love for the listeners today to hear how much you care, how much you want to deliver, how much you want to make sure that people are getting their money's worth for things because these conversations they're never privy to them. Like when you're choosing who it is that you're going to do education with, they never get to hear this conversation between the two people hashing it out on how we have to balance what we're doing in our business and how we have to also balance like delivering at a conference just like that.
Yeah.
So, if anything, I love that I don't know, that we sort of pulled this curtain back and
Yeah.
everybody got to listen to you sort of like process through it and what hurts your heart about it because like you aren't in a place where you're just like, oh, well, this person wasn't happy and that sucks and this is why that sucks. You're not that type of person. You're like, no, like I care about this person. I care that they got what they wanted to get out of this. And so I know you're doing a ton on the back end of things that you're sending some other education pieces and you're
I'm
giving
gonna email them
even
tomorrow.
more from that, which is even the fact that you were in communication with them before the conference, like that's above and beyond. So what you're doing right now, there's not words for above and beyond. You're above and beyond the above and beyond.
Thanks, Jody.
It really is incredible how you handle all of this. But what's also incredible, listen to this segue right here. This is probably going to be a part two because we've already gone longer into this, but it's talking about how incredible you are and how incredible your business is.
All right, my beautiful posers, we are going to have to hit pause right here because, as to be expected, Shannon and I could talk for hours and hours and hours on end. We simply cannot help ourselves. I am obsessed with this woman. My girl crush rages on. Next week, you are going to get into even have a morsel of the information that is inside this woman's brain is seriously a gift. We are going to get far more than that. She is going to go into the process that she uses with her clients while she is shooting boudoir. She is a visionary. She is such a dream. I cannot wait for you guys to just dive in even further with her next week. So until then, bye for now.
Okay, so that is a wrap on this episode of the Posers Podcast. If you loved it, please subscribe, rate, and review because honestly, algorithms are needier than all of our ex-boyfriends combined. And ladies, I need all the help I can get. If you've got thoughts, questions, love letters, even hate mail, please send them my way. I actually read every single one of them. So until next time, stay bold, stay messy, and don't let the bullshit win. Tits up, ears open, and go build something incredible. Bye for now, friends.